Gavin.
Hey, Louie.
I'm back again, honey. Straight from the continent, feeling very European. Though I'm already mad. Like, look at this gorgeous beverage, Gavin. Look at this gorgeous beverage full of what? Ice cubes. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
I need you to ask Dan, because I feel like Dan would know this. What is the sociological reason that Europeans do not fuck with ice? What is that?
They think we're weird for fucking with ice. So I don't know. I truly don't know.
No one want a cute, cool bevy?
They love their beer warm. They love their water warm. I don't get it. I don't know.
Like a room temp orange juice is psychotic.
Though, they gave us the Black Plague, so
they give and give. And we need to return. We do need to return.
But you are back from being Louis in Paris.
Louis in Paris. Yes. Had a wonderful time. Back just in time. Girl, catch me watching Seberg on the Eurostar, okay? Okay? That's the commitment here at the hi everyone, welcome to the Mixed Reviews.
We are a film podcast where we take a film subject such as an actor, director, or mini genre. We take a whole month. We watch as much as we can. We read as much as we can. We spend a lot of time on YouTube. We take all that information, we condense it down into hopefully 2 hours, and we give it all back to you. Then we tell you what we like and what we don't like.
I spend a lot of time on YouTube, but has nothing to do with the show, actually.
Yeah, truly. Also that.
Just the rabbit hole. But yes, welcome. We also, the reviews are mixed, number one, and I feel like they're going to be very mixed today. But I'm excited that it's not just me and Gavin here mixing up today. We have a very special guest, the lovely, the gorgeous, the Doug Fink.
Oh, hi.
Doug, first of all,
hello.
How are you fitting us into your schedule? Doug, for those who are not in the know, Doug is one of the co-creators of the Glitterjaw Queer Podcast Collective, which we are a proud member of. They were nice enough to accept us into their ranks. They have many amazing podcasts, and you can go check out the rest of their roster at glitterjaw.com. Doug, you co-host 4 of those podcasts.
One of them is technically inactive because we caught up on the Pixar movies, but yes, technically 4 of them.
Well, I was gonna say,
podcast slut.
A little bit. It's nothing I wouldn't do for a podcast,
Can we get as part of our merch? We'll sell it. We'll split the profits with you, Doug. But as part of our merch, can we do a baby slut T-shirt that just says podcast slut and the style of 30 bucks? Well, that's what I was going to say. Falling with Style, only is only active when there is a new Pixar movie, but, there's 1 billion and 1 sequels coming out based on the D23 announcements this year.
Oh, God.
So don't worry, you're going to have a lucrative career doing that.
Oh, yeah.
But tell us about the other podcast before we get into this week's subject, because I genuinely love all of them. But a special place in my heart for Skreeonk. But please tell us about the other podcasts that you host.
Yeah, so the very first one was and still is Walloping Websnappers, which is a weekly Spider-Man cartoon podcast that I do with Derek. We deep dive into every Spider-Man cartoon ever made, and they never really stop making them. There's always a Spider-Man cartoon, so we've committed to forever, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So that one has been going for almost 6 years at this point. I also
we've been on one episode of that show.
Yes, you've been on that.
It was a very gay episode.
Oh yes it was.
What are you talking about? There was baseballs, there was diamonds, there was ape gangsters. Nothing gay about
just
that.
A little bit of shower action, a little as a treat. I also do novel gaming with my co-host Katie, where we primarily focus on books and video games. We just talk about media that we've been enjoying lately. You mentioned Falling with Style, which is Pixar movies. We will do Win or Lose, so at some point we'll do TV on that, but that's sort of the one exception. And Skreeonk. Skreeonk is a monthly Godzilla and sometimes other kaiju stuff that relates to that podcast. And that one in particular, I feel like is very relevant to today, because Skreeonk is the one that makes me feel like I actually have to watch movies in a particular way. In 2024, I'm trying to be like a movie girly, so I figured, I can't properly call myself that if I don't tackle a mixed review episode.
Well, we're very excited to have you here because, you are a podcast slut. We are podcast sluts. We are all dipping our toes into the waters.
Yeah, thank you so much. Because, I have to be honest. This is the most I've ever been intimidated to be on a podcast episode. I've said this before, but what the two of you do is so wildly impressive to me. And I have not had butterflies guesting on a podcast since probably the first time I guested on a podcast. And I'm sitting over here remember everything about Kristen Stewart you ever knew. Oh my God.
She'll hunt you down.
She will.
She will. I've said several times about this podcast that the only way that I can maintain doing it is immediately after the episode, I flush every ounce of information about that month's topic from my brain and immediately start building up the new information.
100%. I'm yeah, I've watched a lot of Julianne Moore movies. Can I name them all? No. But you're in good hands. We'll be gentle. Ooh. So just a little bit of old business. I did not put up a poll, okay? But to be fair, also, we have already done a poll about our last episode, which was the amazing, the magical, our number one girly, Miss Kiki herself. She...
Did you see any of the videos of her at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery at the Bring It On screening, the Bring It On Virgin Suicide screening? Oh my God.
Incredible.
The video her friends that made Woodshock took of her doing the I'm sexy, I'm cute. Yeah. I was just she remembers it all. She's got more memory than I do.
Miss Kirsten Dunst, who started it all for us here, we did do a poll on her 7 years ago. Okay.
Yes.
If you would like to go see how those results came out, we always have a good time watching her movies, though. And I was at a birthday party 2 days ago, maybe. And some little homosexual said the only movie she's ever made that's good was Bring It On. And I just about leapt out of my seat, tackled him to the ground. And I was as someone of recent Parisian experience, the minimum you can remember is Marie Antoinette. But she is an icon, and she has so much career ahead of her.
And that little gay boy is dead now. So
yeah, he's dead now.
Yeah,
he's dead now.
Never in the canyon.
A wave of melancholia came over me in that moment. But we are going from a Kirsten to this episode, a Kristen. We gave it away out of the bag last episode when we talked, because Gavin, you mentioned pretty astutely, these last 3 episodes, this one included, we're talking about women who have started as child actors and have continued. Our first one was Jodie Foster, and then Kirsten Dunst, and now Kristen Stewart. Also a lot of kind of sapphic vibes.
Yes,
across the board with these 3 women.
Yeah, it's this odd sort of little triptych because they each also come from different generations. You have Jodie Foster, who really grew in prominence in the 70s, and Kirsten Dunst, who in the 90s to the 2000s, and Kristen Stewart sort of taking that from the 2000s, 2010s. And I think it's just really interesting to see how each of them dealt with that early fame. And also, I think they all sort of had an early brush with something that made them famous enough that allowed them to make a lot of their own career choices, which is not always an option for younger stars, and especially young women. And so it's this, I think this is this weird, fascinating series that we've sort of curated without even trying and doing these 3 episodes.
Right, and that brings me to Doug.
Yeah.
Really, you were the reason why you brought Kristen to us. You suggested her. Why was this someone that you wanted to cover?
Well, what's wild is I think I'd seen 2 Kristen Stewart movies total when I suggested this, because I at some
And it was
point in
just Twilight
lockdown.
twice.
Of course, the first one over and over. No, I think I had seen like one movie during lockdown, and then I saw Love Lies Bleeding, and I was like, I feel like I need to actually watch everything she's ever done. And Gavin noticed that, and I was like, well, now I'm watching everything she's ever done. So
I watched that Twitter like
where
a
it came
hawk.
from. Yeah,
It was a trap. You trapped yourself into the
yeah, I
corner.
walked
Like,
right into it.
Uh-huh.
I set up my Lady Raven concert. You walked right in.
What though was the reason? Like you saw Love Lies Bleeding and thought like, why am I not more in her world?
Well, and I'm sure we'll get like deeply into some of this stuff, but as someone who like wasn't super familiar with Kristen Stewart's work, I was certainly familiar with her in general because it's impossible to live through the 2010s and not know kind of what she's up to. And I did find her and Robert Pattinson pretty fascinating in that they are notorious for being in Twilight, which are notoriously super great movies that everyone loves.
Yes.
But
Cinema.
then you're right, cinema at its finest. But then both of them go on to have reputations for being really good actors for these other things they did that were certainly less high profile. So, without having seen it, I was at least interested in finally witnessing that for myself.
Yeah, they both went on to be little fucking freaks. And that's the way we like them here on the Mixed Reviews. Gavin, what about you? How did you come to, do you remember the first thing you saw her in?
I think probably the first movie I actually saw her in was Zathura. I'm not sure if I remembered that was her.
Yes.
But
I did not. Yeah, I did not.
Yeah, and
to be fair, not many people remember Zathura. So.
I know, and also you don't if you've seen Zathura, it's not really worth it going into Zathura for. She's asleep for half the movie. But I think the first time I truly noticed her was drunkenly in a theater watching Adventureland that I had snuck in little bottles of whiskey to put in my cherry Coke. I was a youth.
The raging movie Adventureland.
Yeah. Because I hadn't seen the Twilight films, and I thought to myself, seeing Adventureland, oh, she's so cool. I was instantly like, oh, her. Yeah. She's cool. She's a cool one. And I think I've sort of carried that around. Now, I will say that I was not immune to oh my God, she's such a bad actress, era when Twilight came out and whatnot. And even though I had not seen those films, I assumed, that people were. But it's so funny, and we'll get into that later. But I don't see that now. I don't see when people are like, oh, she's terrible. If you Google Kristen Stewart bad actress, you'll find YouTube compilations of her breathing, and it's you're mad at her for breathing. I don't.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on here, and she's a very interesting subject because I think a lot of that has to do with, there's regular misogyny, and then there's also there is hating gay people and misogyny, which I think she gets a lot of.
The 1-2 punch.
Yes, correct. But then on top of that, she was young, kind of figuring out her sexuality, identity. But I will say, I think there are movies where she is bad in, and I think I think there's valid. She's a very weird actress. I think she's good, but I think and as we go through her filmography, I think we'll notice and see the work needs to kind of really speak to her.
Yeah,
I think she's just getting a check, and that's fine.
Yes, yeah. I think there are two very distinct Kristen Stewarts, and I think we'll very easily be able to categorize each movie into those two columns.
Yeah.
Louis, real quick before we move into our rewind, where was your introduction to Kristen Stewart?
Well, I certainly saw Panic Room early in my life, but I wasn't Kristen Stewart. I just but it's kind of funny seeing that. I mean, a lot of the hallmarks of a Kristen Stewart performance live in Panic Room as well.
Totally.
So there's that. But I mean, I unfortunately was a little Twilight bitch.
Hell yeah.
I was. There.
Oh, sorry. Did I say that out loud?
There is a photograph of me floating around out somewhere with a homemade red Team Jacob shirt.
You better
Amazing.
find that fucking photo.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say floating around, I mean it is on the internet. It is on my phone in the cloud. Like
The background of my computer.
Yeah.
He's still taking thirst traps with it. Like,
Yeah, I'm like Team Jacob. But that being said, like I mean, so like I watched I think the first 3 movies in the theater. I didn't watch the last ones. Just the timeline.
How will
of
you
that,
ever know the end of the story?
I know.
A love for the ages, Louis.
The timeline of like being interested in Twilight and like being like a young person is really like limited. And like once you like graduate from like college, it's like I don't give a fuck anymore. Like I discovered like gay sex. So like. So,
that and you were like, oh, she chooses Edward?
Yeah. But so, yeah, I mean, Twilight was the real, like, I was like, oh, yeah, I remember seeing her and like as a younger person here and there. But Twilight was like the big, like most people was the big thing. And yeah, God bless. With that being said, Gavin, why don't we get into our rewind?